What was your how didn't they notice moment? One day my sister mentioned in front of my dad that she'd been helping me rearrange furniture at my house. Mentions my boyfriend. My dad is all surprised. You and your boyfriend sleep in the same room. By that point, we'd been living together for 6 years. It was my BF's house. My parents had been over dozens of times. Where did they think I slept? Oh, we assumed you slept in the guest room. By yourself. Edit, my family is Asian. When I was about 13 I shaved my little brother's eyebrow off. I don't know why. I panicked and drew it back on with a marker with little hope that I would get away with it and avoid my mom's anger. Somehow I got through the first day, then the first week, every day getting ready for school and redrawing his eyebrow on with a marker to hide it from my mom. After a couple weeks it had largely grown back and I realized that by some miracle I got away with it. Years later I came clean to my mom and she still refuses to believe that she didn't notice. Cue me and the boys playing hide and seek senior year. It's nighttime. Dark. It had previously rained. The only light is from street lights and my friend's garage. Friend A counts to 20 in the garage. We all scatter around the outside of his house and a bit further to some other houses. I decide to hide not 10 feet away, in the shadow of an AC unit right outside the garage. I was wearing full black, and I pulled my hood down to cover my entire face. I was in a crouched fetal position. I heard friend A walk past me about 5 times, from both directions. I peeked once and he even glanced directly my way. I was in plain sight. I felt like a ninja. My hair used to be extremely long. Like all the way down my back. On a whim, I decided to cut off most of it, and rock a rather short haircut. I walked around my parents' place for over an hour before they actually noticed. My friend came to work wearing new glasses one day and when she was showing them off to me I mentioned that I was surprised because I had no idea she needed glasses. She had been wearing glasses most days, on and off, for a year since we started working together. Multiple people confirmed this when I didn't quite believe her. Maybe I need glasses. I was the one who didn't notice. My now husband, way back in the early days of our dating, replaced our giant, bulky, old CRT TV with a nice, new flat screen with his Christmas bonus. He did not tell me any of this. I came home from work one day, wandered past the TV and him playing video games, into the bedroom, back past the TV, then the kitchen. Took me a good 45 minutes before I went, wait, something is different and I don't know what. He still had to point out to me that what was different was the old TV was missing. In boot camp when it was lights out, many of the other recruits wouldn't sleep and would try to monologue to us about whatever. I wanted to sleep, since we always wake up at 5 a.m., and they kept us awake till midnight with their debates. At the top of my motherfucking lungs I yelled bloody murder, shut the fuck up. This went on for a while. Then I started doing it earlier and towards the end I didn't even wait for lights out. No one besides my rack mates knew it was me, no one else ever figured out my voice or where it was coming from. My rack mates got a huge kick from it and well, they kept it real because we needed our 4 to 6 hours of sleep. I am a high school teacher in California and while explaining something, I accidentally drew a huge dick on my board. Confirmed not one kid noticed. I used to do customer service for a video game, can't give details, don't wanna get sued, wherein I responded to email tickets. Before sending a ticket, you were required to create an internal note wherein you documented their response and what your response was going to be, plus any additional necessary info to help conduct a search. Once, I wrote in the internal describing their message saying, customer sent me a bunch of useless fucking shit. Because, well, they had. After repeated clear instructions, they failed to send me the correct info. So I typed it to unleash the rage, thought I deleted it, then the next day I come in and see I have a response, and I go to start a new internal note, and realize I had, in fact, left that line fully in the previous internal note, which can't be deleted or edited. Meaning that if anyone from the company or my workplace saw it, well, I'd be in a lot of shit. Thankfully, I did this around the holidays and we were swamped with other issues, so no one did any audits of tickets that week. Needless to say, I never played around with that again. I was buying weed a few years ago. I pulled up to an apartment complex and was waiting for the weed dude when a window in the apartment in front of me opened. A second later a little girl, maybe 10 to 12, crawled out. I was 21 so and buying weed so my thought was, do I yell up, no she could fall, catch her nope there's bushes under there. Then she fucking jumped to the balcony next to the window, climbs over the railing, and tries to open the door, but she's locked out. She knocked and some irresponsible / seemingly confused parent opens it and lets her in. No one else saw. I was in class of 25 students and spilled tea on my new laptop. I said fuck, decently loudly and ran my laptop to the bathroom. No one remembered seeing me spill the tea, hearing me say fuck, or seeing me leave the class. Went through an entire enlistment, in the Navy, in a way where people thought I was dumb and I didn't bother to correct them. I let them think I was not able to fix things because they only assumed shit instead of actually asking me. I made E5 on the second try and damn near the entire command was confused as fuck. I was an ET and the entire exam was on specifics about equipment maintenance and repair. To this day I get to talk to old crew members and they bring up how I fooled everyone into thinking I knew nothing so that they wouldn't bother me or wake me up from sleep to fix some shit. I used to have long hair and my granny hated it. The day after I cut my hair, lost about 8 inches, I went to lunch with her and not only did she not notice but when I pointed it out to her she didn't believe me until I showed her a photo of me from a week prior. A few years ago, my friends and I were drunk as fuck stumbling down the street to a McDonald's. My best friend pulls out his dick and starts peeing and walking at the same time. While this is happening, a cop passes by and gets stuck at the light about 10 yards away from us. Literally all he had to do was look to his left and he would have seen 3 teenagers who can't even walk straight laughing their asses off because one is walking and peeing. Very grateful he didn't look. My life would be a lot different if he had caught us. I absolutely destroyed this thing at an old job of mine. I nervously looked around because my coworkers were all over the place and it was loud. But no one looked. I managed to compose myself, clean it all up and make it seem like nothing had happened, then finished the rest of my day. A week passed before they casually brought up that everyone knew and saw what happened but didn't want to help me. In high school I got pulled over for doing just a whole bunch of stuff, mostly related to trying to get away from the cop. He asked me why I did it and I said I was trying to get home by curfew at 1 o'clock. Then I looked at the clock and realized it was already like 3 o'clock so I changed my story. Just got a warning. My parents are very strict and don't allow me or my siblings to have electronics in our bedrooms but we'll ignore that rule and continue doing whatever we do online at night. One morning my mother came into my room to wake me up before school started and opened my curtains which are on the window next to my bed. On the windowsill behind the curtains is where I keep my laptop, Nintendo Switch Lite, phone, and sometimes iPad. She proceeded to rip my covers off and said get up before leaving my room. I had never felt utter panic before then. A couple years ago I was doing No Shave November, so I had built up a decent growth of beard, and on the last day of the month I decided to shave just half my face and keep it for 24 hours before I took the rest off too. So for one day I went around campus with beard only on the left half of my face, and you could tell that at least 80% of people's brains just extrapolated the second half of my beard because they didn't blink, while the remaining fraction would turn their heads as I walked by. I was talking about it with some friends outside my class while waiting for my professor at one point, and when she arrived my friends tried to show her my face, and it took a full 30 seconds and her putting her face a foot away from mine and peering before she suddenly jumped back and exclaimed oh my gosh. At some point halfway through class she even stopped her lecture to tell me, I really see it now and your face is very distracting. I am in my school's theater tech class, it's really fun and I love all the cool shit we get to do. We have this thing called the wash, it's a metal catwalk above the audience where lights shine to the stage. For this play we had to shoot poppers onto the stage, there were 3 of us, the other 2 decided to wait for my popper to go as their cue, my popper didn't go, so theirs didn't either. I was terrified the tech teacher would yell at us after the show. But he didn't. About a week later my friend, she was working by the doors, told me she saw the teacher walk in and say, "Did the poppers go? Looks so good they did." And then ran back out the door. I don't know what this man saw but the poppers sure as hell didn't go, so it wasn't them. One time when I still in school my mother walked into my room in the middle of my acid trip and asked me what I was doing up. I turned around instantly with probably the craziest look on my face and said I couldn't sleep. She told me to go to bed and shut my door. Tripped fucking balls that night. I developed bulimia and I don't think I hid it well until I mentioned it to my dad recently. No one had noticed. It sort of started as a conversion disorder when I was anxious but I lost 20 pounds and became 100 pounds. I felt compelled to vomit after I ate. Still do. It's been a rough 8 months. Also during this time I became addicted to the tranquilizers I was given to treat my conversion disorder when it went away and I'm trying to quit them right now. When I was 10, I took a shit inside the ruins of a medieval fortress. My grandpa walked by while I was doing my thing. Fortunately for me, he was too absorbed in his thoughts and didn't notice me, even though there were no doors. Thank you for making this thread. I remembered the greatest achievement in my life. I can't believe I have never shared this story to anyone over some drinks. Haircut, I always wait 3 months between haircuts, and cut down to 1/2 inch on top and shaved on the sides. Wife rarely notices. Beard, I let my beard grow out and my wife complains. I shave it off and she doesn't notice for hours or even a day. My fucking leg was gushing blood and my parents were just like, "Why aren't you in your room studying? You'll be a failure if you don't study hard enough, like bruh." One day I went to the supermarket with my mother and older sister. We had finished shopping and had loaded the shopping into the car. As I was younger I was in the back seat. My sister went to put the shopping cart back and while we was gone my mother pulled out and started driving away. We got about 500 meters down the road before I said to my mother, "What about my sister?" She turns around and looks at me with a glare and looks me dead in the eye for 15 seconds before focusing back on the road and turning around. As we are driving back we see my sister running along the road waving her hands. My sister told everyone the story and my mother just told everyone she is lying. First, here's some background info. In 8th grade Spanish class, I was one of the few people who paid attention and it really showed. Some people say my normal speaking voice is like a whisper. It doesn't seem like that to me, but a lot of people say it. I would always answer questions and this kid who literally knew nothing always would steal my answers. And surprise surprise, I was right and they didn't actually know anything. On worksheets he would always demand I give him the answers. I made him figure it out on his own. One day he kept asking, so I threw a pencil at him. The moment it hit him the teacher turned away from the board to the class. I was so sure she'd seen it. It felt like she was looking at us. I tried to play it off like I was just waving my pencil back and forth out of boredom, but she didn't even notice I threw the pencil at him. Back when I used to cut myself regularly, my arm was all scabbed over. My mom was measuring me, so she needed me to take off my jacket. I never truly understood panic until that moment. I kind of moved my arm weirdly so she wouldn't see. She just thought I was awkward because she was touching me. I had to sit down for a few minutes after she left, lol. Literally just watching people's kids at a gathering. The shit they do amazes me while the parents are chatting away. Got my nipples pierced 3 years ago, it was a bet, I swear. I never really wanted to tell my parents cause that's kind of a weird conversation. I was swimming over at their house and said f*ck it, I don't care anymore. I was swimming for 3 hours, they didn't notice and went inside. They are definitely people to make fun of me for it, they wouldn't stay silent. Don't know how the titanium rods shining in the sun weren't noticeable, but I still laugh about it to this day. Perhaps this was just clever on my part. When I was about 8 years old, I wrote my name on my bed frame in pen. My mom discovered it and was livid. "How are we ever going to sell this bed frame with your name on it?" I told her, "I did that when I was like 6 and you already yelled at me for it." She bought it. Couldn't believe she was that gullible. My father was installing a cat flap. I pointed out that he was installing it upside down. He ignores me and continues. I had to stop him before he cut the door to literally show him the box and repeat that unless he felt like replacing a door, he'd need to start over. I remember once I saw a People magazine or something with Clay Aiken from American Idol on the cover. It said he had bravely come out as gay. I just sat there staring at it thinking, was that ever a secret? I wrote of this elsewhere, so apologies if you read the story already. I became acquainted with an Asian girl through my work, and we got to be friends of a sort. She was trans, although it was not even slightly obvious. She'd had a number of boyfriends. We spoke of the subject one day, and I asked how her parents had taken her transition. She said her mom was okay with it, but her father didn't know. "But don't they live together?" "Oh, yeah. But he was born in China and he's kind of old-fashioned." "So how do you keep it from him?" I asked, gaping like a fish. "When I go over, I don't wear a bra, put on a baggy shirt, and tuck my hair under a ball cap. He doesn't notice." Apparently it was beyond his comprehension. One day, she recounted, she was at her parents' when some movers were making a delivery. Papa introduced her as my son, Tom, and they did double takes. They weren't fooled at all, but Papa remained blithely ignorant that his son had long ago become his daughter. That's got to hold the record, for me, as far as how didn't they notice, goes. In 8th grade we were doing a dissection of a lamb heart. To say kids enjoyed it was an understatement. As the class quickly devolved to kids shanking and stabbing them, the prize winner was when a student decided to throw a chunk of lamb heart up, and well, turns out they stick to the roof. It was there until the end of class and the teacher was so unobservant that he didn't even realize it had happened. There was a stain mark there for the next year or two. When I was 16 I found out I needed glasses. I kept it a secret so I could show up to school with them and surprise everyone, but they suited me and my nerdy personality so well that nobody noticed. Exasperated, I came home that day and told my neighbor about it, who had lived next to me since I was 4 years old. She said, "Wait, I thought you got glasses when you were like 8. When I was 20 I got arrested for shoplifting alcohol at Target. That was bad, but a bigger problem was that I also had about a gram of weed and pipe in my messenger bag. The thing about my bag is that the pockets had ripped long ago, and so it sort of turned into a big pocket because things would just fall between the fabrics. This was great for me because I would be able to easily sneak in flasks/weed into music festivals, since security just kinda took a look and at first glance it looked like the pocket was empty. Here is a GIF of the bag, https://i.imager.com/beyond4.gifv, to demonstrate what I mean. My problem was that this was not just some random dude checking bags, this was a Chicago Police Department officer searching my stuff. I was totally surprised when he didn't reach into the pocket and just took a quick look and moved on. I got so lucky he didn't notice, because I could have easily caught another charge if he found my weed/pipe, since this was before Chicago decriminalized marijuana. When in 5th grade, I fought this kid and he kicked in the face so hard my bottom lip started bleeding and it was swelling. I went home, nobody noticed. Like a proper swollen lip. Not only that, my forehead had a decent purple spot. I go home for lunch most days and sometimes I'll spill food on me and change my shirt. Not once has a coworker noticed I'm wearing a completely different outfit. Not mine but my dad's, from when he went camping for Air Scout or something, and at the same time the military was doing some training. He said that he and the rest of the group were having a long pillow fight in the hall or something, and then suddenly there's two men in camo with machine guns standing in the middle of the room going shhh. He also said they saw them watching Sesame Street early in the morning, looking really tired. It was probably the only thing on at the time and they had probably been up for 2 to 3 days at that point. I was playing hide and seek in a small store and I'm the only left to be found. I'm talking in the phone with my friend who is also playing with me and giving him clues as to where I am. Now keep in mind I am 17 and don't really want to hide that much longer, so it's pretty obvious where I am, but his cousin walks right past me while I'm talking to my friend. He just completely ignored me and kept walking while I just stared at him, in shock. I then get up and just tell my friend on the phone that his cousin walked right past me. This time I decided to find a better hiding spot just to laugh at them. Felt really sick in class after lunch in 5th grade, knew I was going to throw up and calmly opened my empty lunchbox on my desk and vomited all inside it and over my hands. No one noticed even though I was sitting next to people in the middle of the room, and I just got up with the bag, requested to go to the bathroom, and washed everything out before sitting back down again. Not me, but my karate sensei. He is a wonderful guy, completely bald and had a fairly bushy beard. As an experiment, he shaved half his beard off. As in, left side only. It took half a day before anyone, including his wife and kids, noticed. I couldn't be stuffed to do classwork one day. So, in science, I BSED a bunch of answers. I ended up monologuing about Spider-Man between like 7 different answers, mentioned Batman too, and only answered the first few and last few questions. Teacher decided she wanted to check everyone's work as they were leaving to make sure everybody actually did the quiz. She schemed over my work, and without changing her expression, just said good and went to the next student. That could have been multiple detentions. My boyfriend and I wanted to see what would happen if we gave the fast food worker a gift card to a restaurant that we weren't at. We thought it was funny because of something that happened to me while I was working in college. We ended up giving a Jack in the Box worker a Starbucks gift card. She swiped it, handed it back and said it declined. We didn't die of laughter until we were away from the window. Admittedly it wasn't that funny, but it was fun for us. We were going through a rough spot in our relationship. When I was 17 I went to downtown Chicago with some of my friends. Just some walking around and enjoying the summer day. Well, we got to Millennium Park and to the garden area. We had some devil's lettuce on us and only me and one of my other friends were down to smoke. As since it was summer the park is packed. Me and my friend go into the bush maze and sit on a bench. This bench is located on the side of the paths with the bush going around it. We sit down and light up. We rotate between someone keeping watch and the other doing their thing. Well, at one point my friend is smoking and I begin to stare off into space. Then a police officer walks by and completely misses me and my friend. I didn't even notice. It took my friend whispering angrily "Yo WTF" at me to realize what just happened. Needless to say we finished up and left ASAP. I'd like to think the cop didn't care, but then again it's CPD. I was pregnant with twins. We decided to wait until week 20 plus to tell my parents and the in-laws because it was a high-risk pregnancy and the idea of having to explain that I lost a baby or two if it didn't go well was absolutely inconceivable to me. We were actually waiting for them to ask. My belly was pretty prominent from about week 12, but they never did. So we had to tell them and they were all quite surprised. I was skipping a class in school and decided to just go and sit in the library to read. I heard a teacher come into the library looking for me, and if I stayed where I was she would have seen me immediately, so I got up to try to avoid her, but the only way out was going down the stairs right next to her as she was coming up. She was looking down at the stairs as she walked though, so I decided to risk it and ended up walking straight past her. When they eventually tracked me down in a later class, she asked me where I had been and then how I got past her. She wasn't willing to go as far as calling me a liar, but she was deeply skeptical when I told her I just passed her on the stairs. I have a twin sister. She and I had the same teacher for liberal studies, and after about half a year he said, you two look pretty similar. Are you twins or is it just coincidental? Oh yes, it's very coincidental, said my friend sarcastically. A few days later, while I was in another class, he popped in and saw me. Did you know she has a friend who looks exactly like her? He asked the teacher and she told him that we were in fact twins, so he was mistaken. Oh, you are? Why didn't you tell me? Poor man still didn't realize everyone had been sarcastic. I had a pretty intense, kink, impact scene a few days before a sudden, lengthy hospital admission. I was bruised from my shoulder blades to my knees. A nurse had to help me shower every day. They have to ask about unusual bruises, both from a DV and a symptom perspective, but not one of my rotating nurses said a word. I was in hospital for 2.5 months, and they'd only just disappeared before I was discharged. That's a lot of opportunities for someone to say something. I'm still very surprised no one noticed it. I got glasses when I was 32. Never had them before, and I thought it would be a fun surprise to my family members at a family gathering. No one noticed, except for one aunt who asked if I had bought new glasses because I had a different pair before. My husband, in the family for 13 years now, has had glasses since his childhood, though he often wears contacts. But apparently nobody noticed that either, because another aunt went to him and asked him, since when you do have glasses? I've never seen you with glasses before. So, how didn't they notice my husband has worn glasses for the 13 years they knew him and I never had glasses in the 32 years they knew me? Still no clue. Our school is strict about our haircuts. We had an assembly and they inspected all of the male students' hairs. Many were sent home to get a haircut, but I wasn't included. I haven't took a haircut in 3 months and still going. Many times I have watched people on security cameras approach a sign with extremely clear instructions to stand to the left to wait for an elevator, read the sign, look at the place it tells them to wait, and then stand in the exact wrong spot so they block anyone exiting the elevator when it arrives. While playing hide and seek, I once hid beneath a small broken off branch from the oak tree in my garden. I kind of did it as a joke because it was an awful hiding spot and I could clearly be seen, but I had already used all the other hiding spots I could think of. Surprisingly, my cousin couldn't find me despite walking right past me several times because she didn't expect me to be just lying under a branch right next to her. I guess I was just hidden in plain sight. No one believed me when I told them that's where I had been hiding all along. My math teacher said, "What is the formulas of the area of a triangle?" A classmate said, "Can you please repeat?" And then my math teacher said, "Correct. Very good." When I was about 15, my dad bought me Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2. I got back to my mum's and she kicked off because I wasn't 18 and I couldn't play such a game because of it and demanded it was returned. The week later I came back again with the exact same game after photocopying the cover and changing it to a 15 rating. My mum completely bought it as though they made a game taker for the younger players. To this day, whenever I tell her about it, she refuses to believe it was still the 18 copy despite how horrific the copied cover was. One time at 6th grade science camp, my hiking group was about 30 feet ahead of me cause I was getting distracted by everything lol. Anyways, my group walks down a trail going down a hill, but I go a little off the trail and I trip over a rock or a stump or something and I full on tumble down the hill. Like all the way down. It felt like I had been falling forever, and when I finally stopped rolling, my whole group was still just walking down the trail. Not a single person noticed, which was probably for the better. I was at a wild Halloween party a few years back. One of my good friends puked himself into a coma and fell asleep on the couch. Obviously we took this opportunity to draw a massive dick on the right side of his face. The next morning we were all chilling in the basement when my friend comes downstairs and we all bust out laughing at his face. He asks what's so funny and we try to play it off like we were just laughing about something else, but he wasn't fooled. He assumes something is on his face, so he goes up to a mirror and checks only the left side of his face before saying, "Alright, you guys are good." For whatever reason he didn't check the right side of his face, which was almost entirely covered with a rather impressive dong. Being the good friends that we are, we didn't tell him until after we went out for breakfast. I went to get an MRI of my sprained knee, acquired in a sporting accident/fall onto my bent knee, resulting in a torn meniscus and a fair bit more ripped up in there. Fairly traumatic. I wore a shirt that said Bent Knee on it, because that happens to be the name of a great band that I've seen live several times on tour. Not a single person there noticed my hilarious joke. I'm still amused. My stepbrother and stepsister were fighting and broke my parents' bedroom door. They put it back together and painted the chipped parts with whiteout. My parents never noticed. My brother admitted it years later after we moved, and my stepdad gave him props for tricking him and said he wondered why the door shut weird. A dude and his family worked at this phone refurbishing warehouse, very lax, but tight in retarded ways, security, metal detectors and everything. This motherfucker cut out pockets into his boots and at his workstation would shove phones into them. He would steal 3 to 6 phones a day, and would do so for about 2 to 3 months. Plenty of moments playing games with oblivious players. I once stole Mayfair when playing Monopoly. I just took the property card, then when someone landed on it I demanded they pay me rent. It worked. I skipped school and hid in the basement room that nobody used. So normally my mom would check my room upstairs to see if I got up and went to school and then get ready and go to work. But that day she decided to go get a book from the basement room. I heard her coming down the stairs, but I had nowhere to hide, so I just made like a mannequin and stood there. She opened the door, turned on the light and scanned the room for the book. Her eyes just went right through me till she found the book and walked out. I have never been so excited, confused, and relieved at the same time. Late night partying, underage drinking. In our friend's car heading home. His girlfriend is driving since she stayed sober. We get pulled over because it's late and we're young. Cop makes her exit the car and him take over since it's his car. He can barely walk. He gets in and the cop waits for him to start driving and then takes off. We pull over a couple of blocks later to switch back. No idea how that whole thing happened. We thought the cop would waiting a block away to pulls over again, but nope. I literally put gel in the shampoo bottle. My dad didn't notice until he came out of the shower with a shiny ass face. That was funny AF. One day in my year 6 class, I got up from my chair to go get something, probably a tissue, since during my primary school years, I usually got up to get a tissue once it was hay fever season for me, and when I was walking back to my chair, I realized my dick was very obviously hanging out of my pants. Now, I was sure somebody would at least notice, but nobody did. Nobody giggled, nobody pointed, nobody talked. But what I can't understand is how did my dick got out? I usually wear pants that go all the way to just above my knees, and I wear boxers too. And I was 11 at the time, so my dick wouldn't be that long. So I'm confused on the how it got out. I looked at my crush a shit ton during class, and acted awkward as fuck when I talked to her, but somehow nobody of my classmates ever noticed during the entire past year. Hell, even they thought I was asexual or something, because I was never the type of person very open about sexual or love stuff. Flicked a booger out the window and got pulled over by a motorcycle cop. The booger was on his faceplate. Not me, but I always say this about people who drive on the tram lines and later get stuck. There's more than enough signage and you can tell there's tram tracks there, but people still drive on them. There's 3 reasons this can happen. And hashtag X200B. 1. They're fucking about with their phones while driving. 2. They have problems with their sight. 3. Drunk/drugged drivers. I projectile vomited the ungodly low-quality complimentary midnight vodka shots at a private rented-out Parisian wine cellar medieval cosplay to the point of basically LARPing birthday party in the middle of a crowded room. I tried to reject the ejection, so to speak, but it spewed through my fingers. I was horrified. How didn't they notice? I never take a shot in one gulp. I often get called out for this, so I sneak half of it in pressure situations / I don't feel explaining myself in just before the big cheers. I had spewed as everyone else was in the middle of downing their shots and hollering. I bail into the bathroom and I don't drink straight vodka anymore. I was drunk, like a lot of the time, when I was a teenager. I would get boozed up at home though, after making sure that family would be out most of the time. But they were still times where they would be suddenly back for something. I was drunk. Like, really drunk. I still managed to act somber. No idea if they really didn't care, or my acting was that good. Not mine, but my brother's. Once my YB, younger brother, stole 400ZL, I don't know $100-$130, from my OB, older brother. When OB realized, he asked YB to give it back, but YB claimed that he had lost the money. OB didn't believe him and thought that YB have already spent it on something like airsoft guns. So OB started stealing the money back. He would steal it piece by piece, around $5 at a time. And when I'm writing this, he had stolen like 90% back. The YB still haven't noticed. OB is still stealing from him. What a legend. For my older sister's birthday one year, my parents set up a fish tank in her bedroom. I was woken up by the noise of pouring in gravel and water and setting up filters in a separate room behind a closed door. She slept through it and walked straight past it without noticing it the next morning. Me waking up at 3 a.m. and dropping a glass plate on the floor. My brother and I are constantly rearranging my mom's decorations and making bets to see how long it will be before she notices. She has this gigantic collage picture frame hanging on a wall behind her favorite chair in the living room. One night, I printed out a bunch of pictures of Mark Wahlberg and his wife. She says she hates to see pictures of him with his wife because that's my husband and she's just his side chick, and replaced all our family pictures with those. My dad noticed it the next day but never said anything because he always takes part in our pranks against my mom. It took a little over a year before she finally noticed it, and she wasn't even the one who noticed it. Her best friend was sitting in the living room with her and suddenly cracked up laughing about the fact that there was a whole picture frame dedicated to Mark Wahlberg. My mom proceeded to then leave it like that for several more months before finally changing it back. I've since snuck a couple of pictures of Emily Blunt, my dad's celebrity crush, in the frame, but she's yet to notice that. Once had diarrhea while eating KBBQ with friends. I sneezed and accidentally squirt lead through my shorts. I just hiked them up like Urkel and no one noticed. One of my friends even laid down where I was sitting while I got up to refill my plate. I've perfected the art of standing so still, that I've become invisible. It has something to do with expectations and eye contact. They weren't expecting you to be easily found and they couldn't see your eyes, so their brains didn't register your shape. This reminds me. My cousins and I were playing hide and seek. One of my cousins just climbed the lintel. In houses here, there is a platform at lintel level to store stuff. These are sometimes closed, sometimes not, in plain sight from the door. None of us found him for 2 rounds. When I was about 14, I used to sneak out of my house and meet up with my friend to go to Denny's around 1 a.m. or so. One night I snuck over to his house, knocked on the window and then sat down in front of the grapevines while I waited for him in the shadows. His mom came out to turn on the sprinkler system and the valve was located about 1 foot beside me. I froze as this lady bent down right next to me, her face less than a foot from mine. I'm staring into her eyes but she doesn't even glance my direction and happily turned on the water and walked away. I think I peed a little. Y'all, my defining hide and seek moment was when I was half grown and playing with my younger siblings. I somehow, through sheer magic of the tween years, climbed the massive wardrobe in their room and just chilled in completely plain sight. They must have circled the room a dozen times, but a single upward glance would have given me away as I sat there cross-legged and blatantly staring with nothing to hide me but elevation. It was the funniest thing, and I eventually just climbed down and sat in the middle of their floor until they came back for another sweep and they flipped out. Just like the porn scene where the guy puts a lampshade on his head to hide from the girl's parents. I see you're a Milford man. When my boyfriend, now husband, moved in together, my dad was concerned about sleeping arrangements. I told him we bought bunk beds, ha ha ha. I've got a lesbian in the family. Over 40 years old, owns a house with her college roommate who she's lived with since they were in school in the 90s, neither has had a boyfriend in that time frame, or in one of their cases, ever. Both sets of parents still are clueless, or in deep denial. Offering them advice on where all the single men are, et al. How? My adult self drove my girlfriend to her home, from college, for a long weekend to Long Island. The plan was that I was going to stay with them for a couple days and then we were going to go to New York City for a couple days. My girlfriend told me they knew about this plan. When we arrived they made me sleep in the basement guest room, and I thought it was a little strict but fine, no big deal. But then I noticed we couldn't be left behind in the house alone and I thought it was a little strict but no big deal still. Then I mentioned I had booked a hotel room for us in New York City and a huge fight broke out about how we were going to be in the same room, overnight. I tried to be serious but at this point I still have no idea what they thought was happening between their daughter and me. I also never went back there. A friend of mine lived with her girlfriend for 3 years in a one-bedroom apartment and in that time her parents stayed over on the pull-out mattress many times. Her parents were upset when she came out as gay and were critical of her hiding it for so long. They assumed that the two girls were just friends and rented a one bed to save money. That's so funny. I went to visit my grandma with my GF and my grandma goes to show me my room and then starts walking her to another room. I was like, "Grandma, what are you doing?" And she essentially told me we were going to be sleeping in separate rooms. "Grandma, we've been together for 7 years, where do you think I sleep every night? I'm a guy BTW. We had a Christmas tradition of all like 20 of us cramming into my grandparents' 3BR/1.5 bath ranch house. I hated it with a passion because I never, ever got a decent sleep or shower or shit for the 2 to 3 nights we'd be there. There was a 3-year period where my boyfriend/later fiancé joined us for Christmas. My mom was so horrified at the idea of other people seeing us sleep in the same house that she paid for us to get a hotel room. She only got us one room but she lied and told everyone it was 2 separate rooms. The results were too much in my favor for me to complain, plus it's so absurd it's more funny than offensive. Best 3 Christmases ever. She finally stopped when she let slip to a cousin that she did it because she was worried about the children seeing them sleeping like that, again, only in the same house with 20 other people, not the same bed or even bedroom, and my cousin busted out laughing, told her she needed to get over it, and that they all knew we'd been living together for like 5 years by that point and they weren't so dumb as to think we kept separate rooms. It was interesting when I visited home with my first boyfriend at 19. My mum decided we couldn't sleep in the same room because it wasn't right. My response was, "Where do you think we sleep at uni?" She was pissed for weeks, didn't talk to me for weeks. The same woman kicked me out because my cousins told her I was a lesbian. I still don't know what she wanted from me. She somehow thought it was wrong to sleep in the same room, but we had the house to ourselves in the daytime. Why on earth would we do anything at night when no one was around in the day? Dads are weird AF. When my brother was 17 he wanted to get his ear pierced, so he asked my mom, she said ask dad, so he asked my dad and dad said yes, so my bro got his ear pierced. 5 years later, my dad stops my brother and asks him what the fuck is this while pointing towards his earring. My brother, my mom and myself just start laughing. He then gets pissed cause we're laughing, and he asks why the fuck we're laughing, and why wasn't he informed about my brother's earring. We told him that he's the one who said he could get it. Then he just said oh, and that's it. My mans gave the green light and he forgot, then noticed 5 years later despite my brother wearing earring every day for those 5 years. My story is kind of the reverse. We hadn't lived together before we got married, she lived with her parents and I lived at my place. On our wedding night her father was our chauffeur. He drove us from the reception to my house, and then after stopping in the driveway asked her, "So when will you be coming home?" We had to explain to him that now that we were married she wouldn't be living at his house anymore. Had a similar thing one time when I was at uni. Moving my stuff into my second-year house with my mum and dad, had been with my, then, GF for a few months. New room already contained a single bed, but I was bringing a double bed with me. "Dad, there's already a bed there, what do you need that one for?" Q. My mum and I just looking at him bewildered like, "Do we have to spell this out for you?" "Ha ha ha, that's too funny, but he obviously knew where you slept, he was just playing stupid or he wanted to see what you'd say." My father pretends that my husband and I sleep in separate rooms. We've been together a decade, lived together for 9.5 years and have been married for 4 years. My BIL did this very same thing before. He and his aunt were visiting, while my wife, girlfriend at the time, was heavily pregnant with our first kids, and asked where my wife was going to be sleeping. Mind you, this was our first house, and had been dating for quite some time, and, I can't stress this enough, she was very, very pregnant. My freshman year I went away to college about 6 hours away from home. The first time my high school boyfriend came to visit, my mom asked what hotel he was staying at. The hotel called my dorm room because I'm a broke 17-year-old college student. Once I mentioned sleeping in the same bed with the girl I was seeing at the time and my mom was legit shocked. It was really surprising, as she knew I'd slept over. I'm guessing she assumed I was sleeping on the couch. The worst part is my mom followed up with questions about sex. Haha, had same thing, I've been staying for the weekend at my BF's place every week for over a year, but when I invited him over for a few days, my mom arranged him a separate sleeping place. Incidentally, all 3 of us gave birth within a day of each other, ha ha ha. Just when I thought the story couldn't get even cuter. It's actually illegal for them to ask certain questions like that during an interview in the US. I had to tell them that I was also very pregnant. This is the social code I follow. Unless I am specifically told, I will not ask or assume. To be fair, my general rules is to not ask about it unless I see a baby coming out of their vagina. It's truly the safest way. My sister went to have a bath one night and shaved both her eyebrows off with my granddad's razor that he left in there. When she came out it was noticed immediately, she blamed me even though she entered with eyebrows and came out without them. My sister got chewing gum stuck in her hair and I had to cut it out. It left her with a pretty big bald patch right on the top of her head. We couldn't tell Mom because she'd banned us from chewing gum, in case it got stuck in our hair. So every morning we styled her hair into a ponytail and carefully covered the patch. Which then started growing in, stubbornly sticking up like a unicorn horn, and we had to keep flattening it. It was Aggies until it finally blended in with her normal hair. Mom never noticed.
Thank you for watching. We publish amazing Reddit stories every day. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe to keep the dog smiling.